to. Hope answered to some satisfaction last week the question on polygamy, and tonight we're going to talk about lust of the heart from Matthew 5:28. And really the question is this. Say a husband lust in his heart towards someone and committed adultery in his heart, as Jesus talks about in Matthew 5:28. Does the wife have the freedom to divorce and remarry based on Matthew 19:9? Is it the same kind of adultery? And we're going to discuss that tonight. But one thing that, so buckle up, this could get interesting as we go, I guess. But one thing I think we've got to realize, that when it comes to Scripture, sex is both good and bad. And I guess you could ask the question, can a person lose their soul over a sexual sin? Do you think so? A sexual sin. Yeah. Well, yeah. 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 9 says, "Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor rivalries, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God." You've got several sexual sins there. In Galatians 5 and verse 19, "Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contention, jealousy, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, and following." And he says, "Just as I told you in time past, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God." Here you have other sexual sins that are mentioned. So when you think about this, we have to start, I think, and go back to, as we have several times, Matthew 19 and 9. It says, "I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality or fornication, porneia, and marries another, commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." And that's the question that we're asking. Is Matthew 5 and 28 the same as Matthew 19 and 9? Romans chapter 7 verses 2 and 3 says, "For the woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. But if the husband dies, she is released from the law of her husband. So then if while her husband lives, she marries another, she will be called an adulteress. For if her husband dies, she is free from the law, so that she is no adulteress, though she has married another man." So there is a marriage that God calls sinful. That's adultery. And I think that's key for us to realize, because when you think about these sexual sins and you think about lust in the heart as compared to Matthew 19 and 9, the question is it the same? Does the person have the freedom to remarry, to divorce and remarry based on lust of the heart? To kind of set the stage, I want us to think about something. I think we have to define some things first. How do you define lust? How would you define lust? Because that's what Jesus is talking about. If we can go to Matthew 5 and 28. "You have heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say that whoever looks on a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." So how would you define lust? I think that's going to be one of the keys. Can you define it? Is it easy to define? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the key. It's not just a passing glance. And we can't say it's just a passing glance. I tried to look up several definitions, and this is one definition that I found. It was actually Wayne Jackson that defined it this way, and I think it was good. It says, "This is no passing glance. The lusting person is doing something mentally what he or she almost certainly will do physically if given the opportunity. It says that it's a longing look or desiring someone other than his spouse with a sustained desire for intercourse. So this isn't just someone saying, oh, they're attractive, looking at someone and thinking they're attractive. If that's the case, then everyone would be guilty of that, wouldn't they? Especially if you're married, how did you decide you wanted to go out with someone that's going to become your spouse? You thought they were attractive, right? So that desire is there. The Bible says in numerous places, just as we studied in 1 Corinthians 7, that there's a place for that desire to take place and further that desire. But there's always that desire that God puts in us to be attracted to someone. So it's not just a passing glance. So we've got to make sure that we're understanding that this goes farther than that. And I think that is a good definition because it's talking about desiring. It's akin to, and basically the same thing as covetousness. You're coveting something that somebody else has. It could be over something. You could lust over something materially. You're lusting after what somebody has materially, and you're wanting that. And you just can't get that out of your mind. You're desiring to have what someone has that doesn't belong to you. Now, in a sexual way, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about lusting. So when Jesus talks about lusting in the heart, that he's not talking about just a passing glance here. And I think that's important that we understand. And I think it's important that we understand the terms when it comes to fornication or adultery. And those terms, I think it's important for us to understand so we can understand what we're talking about when we come to Matthew 19:9, and also what we're talking about when we're coming to Matthew 5 and verse 28. Fornication can be described as sinful intercourse. That's basically what fornication is. Anything outside of marriage, where it's premarital sex, where it's fornication, as Jesus is talking about in Matthew 19:9, it is something that's sinful when it comes to this. Adultery, it goes a little bit beyond that, where it is sinful sex, it is sinful intercourse, but there is a violation of the marriage there. So as you're putting these together, we've got to understand what the consequences of these are. And when it comes to Matthew 5 and 28, the consequences, it's sin. Lusting in the heart is sin, so let's just answer that. It is a sin, but I do not believe that it is the same thing when Jesus is talking about commits adultery in your heart. That's the same thing that he's talking about, the physical act in Matthew 19 and 9. And I'm going to show you why I believe that. And one thing that we can look at is, and try to understand is, yes, they're both sin, but the consequences are not the same. And I think the text itself explains that. So if we go to the text, we can look at, let's see. We can look at Matthew 5 and verse 20. Matthew 5 and verse 20. Notice here, let's notice the context of what he's saying. He said, "For I say to you, unless your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." So he's telling us our righteousness has to exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. We have to do something. Our attitude, our actions has to be different than what the Pharisees are doing at this time. And then notice what he goes on and starts with here in verse 21. He said, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you," he says, what's he say? He says, you lay that at the altar and you go and you make this right with your brother. What's he talking about here? It's about their righteousness and their standard of how they are setting the bar. And here's a perfect example of two things being a sin, but different consequences for those sins. He's comparing two things here. What's he comparing? Anger to what? If you're angry with your brother, you're what? What does he say? You have heard it said, those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. He's putting the same thing. He's saying hatred here, or anger with a brother, is the same as murder. Is it the same? Being angry with him without a cause is a sin. Murder is a sin. The Bible tells us that murder is a sin. You can go to, what about 1 John 3 and verse 15? Whoever hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. Look in the Old Testament. Genesis 9 and 6. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God he was made. Romans 13 and 4. For he is God's minister to you for good, talking about the government. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. So, the Old Testament, if someone murders someone, by his blood, the same thing's going to be happening, right? Capital punishment. You've got capital punishment in Romans 13 and verse 4 for murder. Do we do the same thing for someone that we think, or is there attributing signs maybe that they hate somebody? Can I kill them? Can I kill them for it and be justified? Can we execute them? No. Now, they're both sins, but are the consequences the same? See what they're doing. If you look, he says, saying, Ranka and you fool. What the Pharisees were doing, they were saying, it's all right if you go and you chew out your brother. It's all right if you go and say whatever you want to him. You can call him whatever you want to call him. Just don't kill him. You know, they get right up to the line, just don't do the act to kill them, but you can say whatever you want to with them. Jesus says, I'm telling you, you've got to exceed that. Don't hate your brother. Don't be angry at him without a cause. Because why? Murder's got to start somewhere, doesn't it? Doesn't it come from there to begin with? I'm not going to murder someone I like. I'm going to murder someone I don't like. I'm going to murder someone I'm angry with. So Jesus is telling them it starts in the heart. Don't be like these Pharisees, because that's where it starts, and we're going to get into that a little bit farther. But again, it's not the same as murder, is it? If it is, then let me ask you this. How do you regulate it? How do you know someone? How do I know Mike doesn't hate Jimmy? You hate Jimmy, Mike? Yeah. Well, I mean, how do I know? I seen him looking cross-eyed to you the other day. I believe he hates you. I believe we ought to execute him. I mean, you see, that sounds ridiculous, don't it? And I'm trying to make a point. There is a difference, and we understand the difference. Now, is it a sin to hate like that? Is it a sin to be angry? Well, of course it is to be angry like that. Is it a sin to murder? Well, absolutely it is. But the consequences, those are two different things of how that is taken care of, right? We don't treat it the same way. And I think that's the point. Well, I know that's the point that Jesus is making here. Now, if you go down to verse 28, he's making the same point. Notice he says, but I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. He's saying the same thing. You don't wait till you get up to the act and just don't do the act, just like they did with murder. He says you don't go up and call everybody anything you want to, treat them as bad as you want to, just don't kill them. That's not how you're supposed to act. So don't go around thinking about lusting after someone and desiring them and just keep thinking about it, because what's going to happen is you're going to act upon it. Don't wait to that and try to stop it. Stop it while it's in here. They're both a sin, but there's different consequences for those sins. It's not the actual physical act of that. And that's actually what he's talking about in Matthew 19 and 9. It's porneia. It's the actual physical act. But here in this same one, he's talking about it. But look at something else. If you look here starting in verse 28 again, let's go on further. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. So, if he's talking about the literal adultery as far as the physical, as the same thing he's talking about in Matthew 19 and 9, wouldn't the remedy for it be the same? Yeah, but it would be the same, wouldn't it? If one's going to be, this would be too. What do? Pluck your eye out. Cut your hand off. What's he trying to say? If something is coming upon you that much and you're dwelling on it, you do whatever is necessary to make sure it doesn't happen. You know, we were talking about in 1 Corinthians 7 and talking about in other passages that, don't ever let it, there won't be this sexual immorality or this fornication outside of marriage if we put boundaries and we set these boundaries. We do whatever is necessary to make sure nothing like that happens. This is basically what Jesus is saying to the extreme. If it takes cutting your hand off, cut your hand off. If it takes plucking your eye out, pluck your eye out. Well, we all know, I don't preach that literally. I don't tell you, listen here, if it's this bad on you, I want you to go out there and pluck your eyes out. But what's he saying? This is how devastating it is. So here, I think it's best to let the Bible be its own commentary. Is we can't say up here that anger and murder is not the same thing. And down here, he's not really meaning we ought to literally go out there and pluck our eyes out and cut off our right hand. But here in the middle, he says it is literal adultery. Now, is adultery in the heart? It's exactly what Jesus is saying, but it's not yet the action. What he's saying is you take care of it before it becomes the action. And I tell you, there's so much that's out there today. I think this is a real struggle for individuals. I mean, you've got, with the internet, you've got pornography, you've got movies, you've got all of these things that are out there in entertainment and things that I believe there's probably a lot of people having to deal with this. And wouldn't that be lusting in your heart? Isn't that the whole point of what pornography or something is to lust after? Well, yeah, that's the whole point. That's what they're striving for. So, go ahead. Yeah. You think about it. I can't imagine. I mean, this is hard. And I think the Bible's clear on it, but I think the situations that people find themselves in is difficult. I mean, you take, it could be the woman or the man. You take one of the spouse, the other one is viewing pornography over and over again, or find out they're lusting after someone in whatever form that is, and finding that. Has there been a violation of trust? Absolutely there has been. Is there heartbreak? I don't know how you get that back. I'm sure you could. I don't know how you, that's why I said at the very beginning of this study back in 1 Corinthians 7, when it comes to the sexual sins, when it comes within a marriage, that's a sacred thing. And when you violate that in these different forms, it's the trust is, I can't imagine. It'd be unimaginable what someone is going through. And you may know someone, or you may be going through this. It's devastating. But we have to make sure that we still follow what Scripture is. Is it the same as the actual act? And it's just not. Now, are the emotions and the feelings and all these probably just as harsh? I would imagine they are. But as we are looking at how Jesus is the context and how he's talking about this here, it's the same as he's talking about murder, the same as he's talking about anger, the same as he's talking about the other things here as far as the remedy. But look in James chapter 4. Let me give you something else. He says, adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. So what's he saying about a worldly person here? What's he calling them? Adulterer and adulteress? So, can I just say, well, my spouse, they're just worldly. They're just they cuss all the time. They're doing all these things all the time. They're out here just being worldly all the time. Can I leave them based on Matthew 19:9? He's calling them adulterers. Again, how would you regulate that? They're just a no good, no account worldly person. I'm out of here. How do you regulate that? How do you regulate hatred in a person's heart? How do you regulate the lust part? I mean, how would you get to that defining thing of saying, here's the point where they actually committed it and now I can move on? Verse 7. Of what? Of James. Okay, go on down. Therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And while we're in James, I don't know, I may have got out of sequence here, Brian. Okay, I was going to go James 1 to 4:2, but yeah.
The word adulterer shouldn't be there. That's the wrong word. It's only adulteresses. Do you not know friendship with the world is enmity with God? It's adultery against Christ, our husband. So you're not an adulterer. We're all adulteresses if we're guilty of it.
Right.
But it's for infidelity to Christ.
Yeah, James 4:4, and in the Old Testament, it's about breaking that covenant with Him and going into the world. Right.
It's not the husband and wife.
Right. No. But I was just, and I'm sorry if I misunderstood. No, he's talking about spiritually here from Christ. But the example I was making, if we use it like that, it would be the same concept. That it was toward the world. No, it's not for husband and wife. It's our relationship with Christ. Just like the Old Testament talked about Israel being adulterers, again going out to idolatry. The same thing. Yeah. But I was just using it in reference of if we're going in with that same thought, then it would be the same concept of we could just call them that and move on to something else. The point is it's not the same thing as the action. One, because there's no way to regulate that. How do you govern emotion? I mean, how do you get to the line where, okay, that was lust. Well, this wasn't lust. That's lust, but this wasn't lust. And we need to always be checking ourselves and making sure that it's not, because as James says, go to James 1. It says, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by what? His own desires, by his own lust, and enticed. Then when that has conceived, it gives birth to sin. When sin is full grown, it brings forth death. So here he gives the whole progression of it. We want to stop it at the desire part before it's ever, and that's what Jesus is saying for us to do. Stop it there. But we want to say there is the same as when it gives birth to sin and is full grown. And it's not the same. It's the progression of it. But Jesus is saying, like he did all the way through the Sermon on the Mount, don't let it get out of here. Control what's in here, and it won't ever become an action. Because if you constantly dwell on that and you constantly long after that, then what's going to happen is it's going to become an action. Because you've already done it in here, it's going to become an action when you get to that point. The only thing that's keeping you from it is opportunity. And he says, don't do like the Pharisees. That's the whole point he's trying to make in Matthew chapter 5. Don't be like the Pharisees and think you can live any way you want to. Just don't get right up to the point. You know, that's... And we all know this is true. I don't know... It's not been that many, but I've had several conversations with individuals that were dating that come over and said, Ronald, it almost got too far. And you know why it almost got too far between them? Because they didn't put those boundaries. They didn't check their heart. They didn't wait. They didn't, when those emotions are raging in their inside, they see how close they could get and thought, well, I can make the decision then. And that's the whole point Jesus is trying to make. Don't wait till then. Don't do like the Pharisees and just get right up to it and think that you can do whatever and try to find some loophole and out. It's going to get you every time. I mean, think about it. You don't make those kind of decisions in the moment. You're going to make the wrong one because emotion is what's going to be guiding you. So Jesus is saying, that's the whole point. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is walking around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That roaring lion is, he's confident. He knows that he can do it. He's the king of the jungle, king of the world, to where he knows he can get you. Stay vigilant to that. That's what Jesus is talking about. But I'm trying to stay to the question, is it, and what was that, the actual question when he's talking about lust in the heart, Parker? Am I answering that? It's not the same as Matthew 19 and 9. And one of the reasons, I believe, is, well, let's go to Mark 7 and 21 for a minute. Again with the heart. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceeds what? Evil thought, adultery, fornication, murders, theft, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man. So here it says that's where it comes. It's got all these sexual, sinful sexual acts here. That's part of that. He says, where does it start? It starts on the inside. And he says that's where it does. Then it comes out. That's what defiles a person, because that's where it comes from to begin with. Now, again, I'm not minimizing how serious this is. It's still sin. And what ties them both together, Matthew 5 and 28, Matthew 19 and 9, is they're both a sin. What we're talking about is the consequences as far as being able to remarry, and I just don't believe the Bible teaches that. Now, does that put some people in some pretty hard situations sometimes, to where it may leave them to where they're by themselves? Yeah, it may be. But here's something that we've always got to realize, is when we start letting those kind of emotions take over, and they would be strong emotions. I can't imagine how a person would regain the trust back, whether it's Matthew 5:28 as far as lust in the heart to that extreme, or whether it's Matthew 19 and 9 where it's the actual act. I don't know how you get that trust back. I think Matthew 19:9 is why Matthew 19:9 is there. Again, it has nothing to do with forgiveness. It has to do with consequences. It has to do with the different consequences in the actions. But again, when emotion takes over, here's what we forget. We're only in this world for a little time. And it's eternity that we're thinking about, right? Eternity is what we're striving for. And there may have to be some sacrifices. There may have to be some uncomfortable situations and hard situations here until we get to eternity. But it still doesn't change the teaching of the Bible. And I think if we look at the whole of Matthew chapter 5, I believe you'll see the context in which Jesus is talking. Any comments about this? I know this is a pretty touchy subject. You got anything else, John? I know I'm probably explaining it like mud, but
People who forgive adultery that's been committed against them, I believe people of great faith and great understanding. I think we make too much out of sex. We make it bigger than it actually is. A man or a woman can commit adultery without, at least in their mind, without betraying the love of their spouse. Because they can get caught up in the moment and do something that's completely out of character for them. And their spouse, they understand that about this person. And when they seek forgiveness, it takes a little time, but the spouse will forgive them. I've heard some talk about how goofy they were for someone who's got the ability to forgive such a violent act against your person. I've dealt with a lot of people who've committed adultery through the years, and I've seen a lot of people who I honestly believe they got caught up in something they didn't mean to, but before they knew it, push came to shove and they did the wrong stuff. The sexual urge in a person is a fierce urge. They say it's the strongest natural urge that we have as human beings. That is partly due to lead us to procreate. But there's not much that's stronger than the sexual urge. And it can be really overwhelming. And I think about Paul a lot of times. When Paul says, I didn't want to sin, but I did, and I don't even know why I did it. And I think that can happen to people. Used to, I thought, differently. But over the years, I've kind of changed my mind. Because I know myself. Sometimes I ask for forgiveness for something, and I believe the Lord gave it to me. And in my mind, I thought, well, I'll never do this again. And then in 2 weeks, I did it again. And I think, how can you do this? Am I lying to myself? Am I lying to God? What's wrong with me? And then one day, I finally caught on to what Paul was saying, 1 Corinthians 7. And there's a lot about these things we don't understand.
Yeah.
But a person who's big enough to understand and able to forgive, I think is a person to be admired instead of ridiculed. Now some people,
Do you think you can forgive without having the trust regained? Do you think there's a difference or same?
It's going to take a while to get trust back,
Yeah, I don't think I'm where you're at yet. I think it would be the forgiveness. I think because the Bible requires that. I think getting over it. I don't know how a person does. It's just to where, Anyway, I think it's devastating either way. As you go through it, it would be tough for somebody to have to face that. And I do believe that's why Matthew 19:9 is there. There's some people that can't get over that. The forgiveness is there, but can't. Yeah, some people can't get past it. Because it is, as he's always referred to everything like that, like a marriage. How his relationship is with us, in the church, like it was with Israel, just like James 4:4, it's, breaking that covenant, and it's a serious thing. And I'm not, it's just tough. And this subject has always been tough for individuals. And as we said, the consequences are different when it comes to Matthew 5:28 and Matthew 19:9, not minimizing it. And I think, and as John says, I think, two things on that. One, I think it is how individuals view sex, and I think that does matter to how you go into a marriage, that it is, because marriage is a sexual thing, so it is something that is part of it, and it's how you view that. But when you get into this, I think it goes farther. It goes into trust, and it goes into just a lot of things. I don't. I'll be honest. I don't understand a lot of it. I don't understand how anybody could be in that position. But people do, and then you have to deal with it, and that's up to the individuals of how they deal with that. And it takes a lot of faith and a lot of effort and a lot of things to take place. So, but again, it is back to being able to regulate as far as Matthew 5:28. If we didn't say anything else, how would you regulate that? How would you be able to say that person? And I think that's the biggest argument, that it's not the same as Matthew 19:9, is how would you regulate that? Someone's emotions. How much do you think a person hates someone? Do they hate them enough to where they've committed murder in their heart? How do you know if someone's lusted to that point where they've committed adultery in their heart? How do you regulate where that's at? And I don't think you can govern emotions that way. And that's why I don't believe it's the same.
Punishment for literal adultery was stoning.
Yeah, Leviticus 20 and 10, you'd be put to death. It was a serious thing. But again, would they stone someone for lusting in the heart? I could just say, hey, this person is, bring them out here and stone them. I mean, you can't judge a person's heart like that. Yeah.
Somebody for committing adultery, you had to have at least 2 witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a witness to mental adultery.
Mm-hmm.
There are no witnesses except you and God.
Right.
So nobody can throw a stone.
Yeah. And pull Matthew 5:28. That's another thing too, is when it comes to adultery, the physical act, it's 2 individuals. Both individuals are in that if they're married. And notice here it says, but I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So it wouldn't, if we took it to that extreme, as some people want to, then the person that they're lusting after would be involved in that too, wouldn't they? He said, you've committed adultery with her, so could their spouse put them away and remarry because someone lusted after them? You can kind of go around in circles like that. Again, it's not minimizing it at all. It's sin, but I think it is different and the consequences are different. So, anything else?
Go too far, becoming an enemy with God and being a friend of the world. When you're doing those kind of things, you are committing adultery on Christ, who is we're His bride. So we're going after things of the world, which we're not supposed to be going after, because we've let that lust go too far.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we let that lust go too far, the main thing we need to do is what Jeremy said back here: flee the devil, and to the best of our abilities, seek after Jesus. And then if we try our best to get all that stuff out of our life and focus on Him, we'll move forward.
And Matthew 5:28 is no different than anything else in our Christian life. As Paul said in Philippians, focus on these things, whatever things are true, whatever things are just, whatever things are noble, whatever things are good report. Focus on meditate on these things. Why? So these things don't happen. It's not about just getting evil out. You get something else in. You turn from evil and turn to good. Because if you don't turn to good, you're going to turn right around and go right back to evil, right? So we've got to fill ourselves up with something. And if we're filling ourselves up with these things, then we won't allow that desire to conceive that brings forth sin, that when it's full grown brings forth death. That's what James is saying. If something's here, take care of it here.
Like John says, Satan knows your weak point. That's where he's going to hit you.
Yeah.
And you may be a man who doesn't do anything like that or would never do anything like that, but he knows that, like John said, I don't know why I done it. The reason he did it is because he thought at that moment to do it.
Right.
It's hard to do all these things sometimes. It is hard.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at a person in lust, you're treating him like an object instead of a person. You're reducing that person down to a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really bad. I mean, adultery's bad, okay?
Right.
But that is really bad when you start treating a human being like
Yeah.
an object.
And Christians ought to think about that in how we dress. Think about how you send your daughters out into the world. Are we causing someone to violate Matthew 5:28 because of the way individuals are dressed? That's part of being vigilant as a Christian, to make sure. That's where lewdness or lasciviousness comes in. These actions or words or things that lead to these sinful sexual things is anything that contributes to that. So we always got to make sure we're on guard so these things don't take place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And prison rules have better rules on modesty than the world does. So, anything else? Can we?
The religion in the world, even religious people who claim to be Christians, I know a person on Fox News channel. She's supposed to be the religious person of the channel, and she lives with her fiance. Now she's like the religious person,
Yeah,
but she's living with a man she's not married to, and it's okay.
yeah.
To everybody on the thing, it's okay. It's strange the way things are now. People have a whole different attitude.
Yeah,
about it.
they do. Well, I appreciate these questions. I appreciate this study. A little uncomfortable at times studying it, but I think these are things that are relevant for us today, and I hope that we've learned some things from it.